Hey, homerjnick here, and today I have a video build guide for my hardcore Sunwuko Wave of Light Monk that I have been running in Season 13. This season I've been playing solo and streaming every session to YouTube to try and prove 2 points about Diablo 3 and consoles. One, that you can compete solo without grouping up on the leaderboards, and also that you can compete on the leaderboards without using exploits, which are still being used rampantly in the game. And after 40 odd days, I've had a real blast in Season 13. But a few people have been watching my stream have asked about the build that I'm using. I've got two variants, a Greater Rift version and a T13 speed farming build, and they've asked could I do a video guide on that, so here it is. Of course, if you look on Icy Veins or DiabloFans.com, you will see a written guide for this build, as it's very common. This Sunwuko Wave of Light build is very common, and you can get it on the internet. But anyway, here is the guide that I use for Season 13. So let's just go through the two variants of this build, the Greater Rift version and the speed farming version. It's a very good build. On the leaderboards for hardcore, for the monk, we have the top clear is 107, and remember we're only 40 days into Season 13, so there's still well over another 40 odd days to go, since they generally last 90 days, and it's cleared 107. I've cleared 104, so this build has definitely got the potential to clear 110 on hardcore, and of course well above that in softcore. So it's a great monk build to use, and particularly because it's one of the easier builds to play. So what is the build? So let's load up my we've got already equipped the Greater Rift pushing build. I'm just going to go through the gear, the roles on them, and the skills and the reasons why this build uses the certain pieces, so you can see the benefits of that. So because it's a Sunwuko Wave of Light Monk, naturally it will use the Sunwuko set. Whilst there are 6 pieces in the Sunwuko, we only use 5. We use in the cube, we use the Ring of Royal Grandeur to allow us to take away one of the 6-piece sets and still get the 6-piece bonus by only using 5 Sunwuko set items. So the ones that we use are the gloves, the Sunwuko paws, the Sunwuko balances shoulders, the Sunwuko soul chest, the Sunwuko leggings for the pants, and the amulet, the Sunwuko shines. There are the 5 pieces that you want to get, and with that ring in the cube you will get the 6 set piece bonus. So what does the Sunwuko set do? It reduces your damage by 50% when you've got Sweeping Wind active. That's good for toughness. The 4 set bonus is not really used. It creates a decoy that taunts enemies and explodes for 1000 weapon damage for each stack of Sweeping Wind you have. That's okay. It's really the 6 set piece bonus that we really like. In that Wave of Light has a damage increased by 1000% for each stack of Sweeping Wind that you have, and we are going to have 10 stacks all the time, so 10,000 weapon damage is what we are going to have. So that's the 5 pieces of Sunwuko that you're going to wear. Generally the roles can be different depending on how you build. If you're going for CDR, if you're going for resource cost reduction, area damage and such like. This is what I use. So my Sunwuko legs have Dex, Fit, Armor and secondary res. My gloves have Dex, Crit, and area damage, along with physical secondary res. My Sunwuko balances have Dex, Fit, all res, and area damage. I would have loved secondary res in there, but that didn't drop. Sunwuko souls, Dex, Fit, minus damage from elites, that becomes very, very important in the higher Greater Rifts, and secondary res once again. Very important, the amulet, you want elemental damage of fire. Fire damage is what we're using in this build, and you want the double crits there along with a socket. And so that's the kind of roles on your Sunwuko gear that I've been aiming for, and that gets you your 6 set piece bonus, as we said. What about the weapons? These 2 are mandatory. So you've got Kaioshiro's Blade. What that does is increases the wave of light damage that we use. And particularly if you hit 3 enemies or less, it's going to increase the damage even more. So I've gone for Dex, Vit, and area damage. I may have changed that to life per hit for hardcore as I really begin to push, but at the moment it is area damage. Vengeful Wind is extremely important in this build because, as you notice, it increases the maximum stack count of Sweeping Wind by 7. So you start off with 3 stacks of Sweeping Wind, this increases it by 7. That gives us our 10 stacks of Sweeping Wind, and hence why the 6-piece bonus or sweep of the Sunwukos, you get to 10,000 weapon damage, 10,000 damage because you've got 10 stacks of Sweeping Wind. So you really need a Vengeful Wind. And again, you're looking for, you know, I've got mine in mind Dex, Vit, because it's primal. The Vit comes in handy, and I've rolled 80 damage on it. But some people like 10% damage, or if they need more cooldown, or resource cost reduction, or life per hit. Really, there's no kind of set rolls that you want, just whatever feels good for yourself. But I've gone for area damage in there. So those are the 2 weapons that you definitely need. The Helm is also very important. This increases not only the wave of light damage up to 150%, as you can see, but it also casts wave of light at your enemy. Because we're going to be playing ranged, we don't want wave of lights dropping at our feet. We want the wave of lights hitting our enemies. This Helm becomes important. That's why we can't wear the Sunwuko crown, and why we need to use the ring to get our 6 set piece bonus from 5 pieces. So yeah, I go for Dex, Vit, and critical hit chance on that one. The bracers again are important. They're more around wave of light. The Pinto's Pride, wave of light now slows the enemies down by 80% and for 3 seconds, and deals the extra damage as well. So the extra damage is great, but the slowdown is brilliant because it procs your legendary gem, Bane of the Trapped. Because we're playing range, we're not in within close proximity of the enemies, then that aura doesn't trigger the effect, but Pinto's does. So that's why we can use Bane of the Trapped, because the bells, the wave of light, procs the Bane of the Trapped using Pinto's Pride. The boots are the crudest boots. We're using Mystic Ally to regain spirit, and so with the crudest boots that doubles Mystic Ally, so we're getting 8 spirit per second passive, and we get 200 spirit when we activate the crudest boots. Because Wave of Light is spirit hungry, we need a way to replenish spirit, and the crudest boots just doubles the effectiveness of Mystic Ally. So that's what you want to aim for that. And you've got their Dex, Fit, armor, and secondary res, along with 15% Wave of Light damage. I forgot to mention Pinto's Pride. You're looking for elemental there. You want to try and get fire skill damage on that. That couples with the fire skill damage on your amulet as well. Combined, hopefully you want to get 40%, 220s. That really does boost the damage of Wave of Light. So then you want Dex, Fit, critical hit chance, and any good secondary, obviously. I've got 6% damage from melee attacks. You would like a Wave of Light that goes 150%, try and get a primal or a high one. That's the best one I've got so far. The 2 rings are kind of up for grabs. The slot's not set in stone. On softcore they will use focus and restraint for 100% more damage, but you've got to hit an enemy with a primary generator, which means you've got to get up close and personal. That's a bit tricky and hardcore. Some players do it. I don't want to die, so I don't use focus and restraint. So I use the Unity for the damage reduction by 50%. Obviously on my follower I've got another Unity, and it uses a token where you can't die, and that's why the Unity works. So I use a Unity, and I've got double crit, socket, and res on that one. And then I use Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. This reduces the cooldowns of a skill by 1 second every time you hit with a Wave of Light. So we've got certain skills that we activate, and then we have to wait for the cooldown. The Obsidian Ring makes that cooldown come down a lot faster. So that means we can replenish spirit, we can have other damage mitigation skills up faster. Some people use Convention of Elements, so they get that 200% burst damage every 4 seconds. Well, 4 seconds for during every 20 seconds. So some people like that. Or they use Stone of Jordan, which gives you 30% damage against elites. But I think in hardcore, I always want to have my damage mitigation skills up fast, so the Obsidian Ring works wonders for that. And that kind of covers the whole thing. The belts, the Witching Hour is the best belt for damage, because it can roll critical hit damage. So I've got Dex Fit, attack speed and critical hit damage, and secondary res on that as well. So that's a great stat stick there. So that just covers the gear and the rolls on the gear, so on the build. So what about the skills? Well, hang on, let's just go back to the legendary gems that I use. I'm using Bane of the Trapped, obviously, with the Pinto's Pride, that proc, so you get extra, I've got 46.5% extra damage. Bane of the Stricken is required when you're really pushing, so you can take down the Rift Guardian. If you can take down the Rift Guardian quite easy, you can replace that with Esoteric, and you will survive a lot easier with that. And the last one is Zaze. Because we're playing ranged, we're going to be hitting enemies on the edge of the screen, we want that extra damage, and as you can see, I get an extra 60% damage when I'm 50 yards away from an enemy, so that is a huge damage increase as well. In the cube, Kanai's cube, as I said, we use the Ring of Royal Grandeur to get our 6 set piece bonus, wearing only 5 Sunwuko sets, that's mandatory. The Incense Torch of the Grand Temple is mandatory as well. It reduces the spirit cost of Wave of Light by 50% and increases its damage. Wave of Light is spirit hungry, so to reduce the cost of that and increase its damage is really required. The middle one, Cinder Coat, it reduces the resource cost of fire skills by 30%. Because we're using the fire-based rune on Wave of Light, then they cost 30% less again. If you've got resource cost reduction on your gear and you don't need the Cinder Coat to reduce it by a further 30%, you can manage your spirit well. Then Spirit Guards, if you're using the Focus and Restraint version for a 60% damage mitigation, or Mage Fists for an extra 20% damage. Can go in there, but I need the Cinder Coat to reduce the cost of Wave of Light. So what are the skills then? Well, let's go through the passives first. The hardcore, near-death experience, absolutely required. Harmony boosts your resistances, which you really need. That's why you want to stack secondary res on all your gear, and in particular physical. Physical res would be really handy, so you can take a hit, and Harmony boosts that. Seize Initiative for a better attack speed, so you can hit enemies as you hit them for the first time for that extra 4 seconds. And obviously you want to get your cooldowns down as much as possible, so Beacon of Utar. So the actual skills that we use then, well, naturally we're using Wave of Light with Explosive Light as a rune, so that is going to do our main damage. That's all our damage comes from. As you can see, the cost is 75 spirit. That's quite a lot, but with the things in the cube, the Incense Torch and the Cinder Coat, that comes down quite a lot. So that's what you hit enemies with, and you want to hit enemies as far away as possible on the edge of the screen to increase the damage from Zaze. We use Dashing Strike as our mobility skill, and as you use it, you gain 40% increased chance to dodge with the Blinding Speed rune. So that really increases your toughness, so you want to be dashing every 4 seconds to keep that bonus up. Epiphany Desert Shroud, damage reduction by 50%, absolutely needed in high greater rifts, and also increases your spirit regen as well. Sweeping Wind is required for the Sunwuko set, so you definitely need it. We use the Inner Storm rune. And as you say, it says there, if you have 3 or more stacks, you gain 8 spirit per second. We always have 10 stacks. You get stacks by hitting enemies with critical hits, and considering we're spamming Wave of Light and hitting enemies all the time, we're always going to be having up to 10 stacks. If we're travelling and there's no enemies, Sweeping Wind will start to drop. You will need to manually cast it just to keep up the 10 stacks. But I'll show you that when I run a greater rift. But the 8 spirit per second is very handy too. Mantra of Salvation, agility increases your dodge chance and will increase your resistances when you activate it, again for toughness. And because we have to manage our spirit, we will run out of spirit at some point in higher greater rifts. So we have Mystic Ally, Air Ally, which will increase our spirit regen, and also when you activate it, give us 100 spirit or 200 with the Cruda's boots. And so that's very much needed when you start to run out of spirit. So that's kind of the skills that you need. So what is kind of, how do you throw all this together then? What do you do with the build? Well, when you enter a greater rift, you cast Sweeping Wind. And as you can see, it's starting to drop off. But as you hit enemies, that will then start to stack up to 10 stacks. You'll see the indicator on the Sweeping Wind icon. So you enter the greater rift, you cast Sweeping Wind, and you dash. So you've got your 40% dodge chance up when you come near the first enemy. I also activate Epiphany because on the console version, for the first 10 enemies you have to kill, you're doing less damage than PC because of Nephilim Glory. So that first 10 kills are very important. You want to kill them as fast as possible. As soon as you get Nephilim Glory, that doubles our damage to be the same damage as PC, and then from then on we can manage the rift. But those 10 enemies can be quite tricky in a high greater rift, so hence why I use dash and Epiphany at the start. Then you want to keep dashing to enemies. You want to keep hitting them with a wave of light. Keep your Sweeping Wind stacks up. When the Oculus Ring from the follower kicks in, which is an 85% more damage, stand in it and start spamming your wave of light, and you're going to kill things. So I'm just going to open up as an example 99 and show you what I mean and how I do the rotation of skills and how the build comes together. So I'm in, cast Sweeping Wind, cast Epiphany, and I dash. And I dash. There's the enemies. I don't have Nephilim Glory, so it's a bit of a struggle to kill the enemies to start with. I'm just spamming Wave of Light. You can see my spirit. There, I've got Nephilim Glory. Now I'm up. I've got 10 stacks, as you can see. There's an elite. I want to dash. And you just want to try and be as far away. There's the Oculus Ring. Stand in the Oculus Ring. Avoid enemies. And as you can see, that's all you do. Keep Epiphany up. The Obsidian Ring is proccing and it's reducing the cooldown of all my skills. If I run out of spirit, I'll do Mystic Ally. It's a bit of a nightmare to have an elite right at the start. And that's all you do. I'm going to try and kill him. And I proc. So, because you're very squishy with no esoteric. And so you might want to run esoteric if you can drop stricken. I can't drop stricken, so but that's the skills and rotation. For the speed build, let's just load that up. There's just a little bit of variance with this. It's the same 5-piece Sunwuko. You swap out Pintos for Nemesis Bracer, and the reason is you want to spawn elites at shrines. The reason for that is you drop, you still have the Vengeful Wind for the Sweeping Wind stacks. You need 10 stacks for 10,000 weapon damage, but you drop the Kaushiro Blade for the Ingeom. The Ingeom reduces cooldowns by 9 or 10 seconds for 15 seconds after you kill an elite. So if you think about it, Dashing Strike has a cooldown of 8 seconds. But after I kill an elite, all my cooldowns are reduced by 9 seconds, which means I can infinitely dash. I can dash and it's straight off cooldown, straight away. And so you can dash for 15 seconds non-stop. That mobility skill in a T13 Rift is absolutely brilliant, because you can move right across the map in 15 seconds killing things. Because we don't run out of spirit, we drop cinder coats, we put Pinto's Pride in the cube, so we get our damage of 150% from that. We drop the Witch Now, we don't need damage, and we put Gold Wrap in. Gold Wrap, on gold pickup, you gain armor for 5 seconds, equal to the amount picked up. In a T13 Rift, you're going to pick up massive amounts of gold, meaning you're going to have massive amounts of armor. And so, what's going to happen there is you're going to be invincible, to be honest. Absolutely invincible. The reason why we get lots of gold is we drop one of the legendary gems. We don't need Stricken, we don't need Esoteric, we use Boon of the Hoarder. That creates gold every time we kill an enemy and gives us movement speed. So there's loads of gold, you pick it up and you're invincible, basically. To couple with that, we don't need the Unity for damage mitigation, obviously, because we are pretty much invincible. So we use the Avarice Band, the ring. That gives us amazing pickup radius. So it picks up all the gold on the screen for us, keeping up our toughness. And picks up all the globes as well. So because every time you pick up gold, it increases your radius for 10 seconds, stacking 30 times. So you get up over 30 yards of pickup radius. With the Nemesis, it spawns elites. As we said, killing elites procs Ingeom, so we can infinitely dash. And that is really good. Nothing else changes in terms of gear. In terms of skill, it's the same skills, apart from the mantra. I use the mantra of Conviction Annihilation because it increases movement speed, which is all, T13 farming is all about movement speed. So if we open up a rift, a T13 rift, cast Sweeping Wind, there's an elite pack. So now I can infinitely dash because I've killed that elite, see? I can continue, and I can just dash for the next 15 seconds. And all you do is you dash and spam bells. And you're looking for your next elite or your next pylon. Generate more and start spamming dash. And this way it creates a very fast build. Goblins are brilliant, they're classed as elites. So you just dash. So they proc it as well. If you find an open map, this build really starts to shine. Because you can, as you can see, you melt things on T13 and then you can start dashing. As soon as you kill an elite, so all you're doing is hunting elites. Press your bells every now and again to kill things. And I've got Ingeom up again, and as you can see, you can just clear the map. Enemies die in one hit. Elites die in 2 hits. Rift Garden die in 3 and 4 hits. Which is really good. And that's the speed farming build. So the Great Rift build and the speed farming variant is very handy. There is a bounties version which I use, which drops the gold wrap belt because you don't get gold when you're fighting bosses for bounties like Mathiel, Adria, and there's no gold, then it doesn't do any defense and you'll die. So I use Kaosharo's Soul, which allows me to have Sweeping Wind up without having to refresh it. So you cast Sweeping Wind, it's permanently up and it's gaining stacks, as you can see, and it stays at 10 stacks. When you face a boss, there's a 5-second delay and a cutscene, and that kills your Sweeping Wind stacks. You can't manually press any buttons, and you lose your stacks without that belt. That means that you're facing a Rift Guardian with 1000%, not Rift Guardian, a boss with 1000 damage rather than 10,000. You ain't gonna kill it on T13. So for bounties, I put in that belt. I put back in Unity with Esoteric for toughness. So that means you can kill Mathiel pretty easy. So that's what you do for bounties, but it's a very slight version on the speed build. So guys, that's the build that I've been using, the Greater Rift version, the speed variant version, and even a slight modification for bounties. It's a fantastic build. It's going to clear easy 110, and it's fairly easy to play and to manage. So that's what I'm doing. I'm aiming for seeing how far I can go with it. So good luck, guys. I'm homerjnick, and I'm out of here.